Hi everyone, welcome to week 1 of English 101. I am so happy that you're here. So hopefully you had a chance to watch my introduction to our course video that I emailed out last week. It's also posted on our course. If you haven't, it might be a good place to start if you're kind of like, oh my god, there's so much going on and I don't know where to click. But this video is just kind of an introduction to week 1 and what our course is all about. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'd like to do is sort of introduce you all to what English 101 is all about. Most of you probably have taken English classes before, say in high school or maybe in another college course. And many of you might be thinking, I don't really know what rhetoric or composition mean, but I get the idea that it's probably a lot of reading and writing and might be a little boring. Depending on whether you feel that you're a good writer or a bad one or kind of somewhere in the middle, your opinion about what the course might be or might do is going to be different. But what I wanted to explain is really just what rhetoric is and how it's related to composition. So in a minute, we'll watch a short video that kind of explains this idea. But initially, rhetoric is at its base form just the art of persuasion. So some of you I know may have taken like a rhetoric class in high school. I think that's developed into the curriculum in Illinois. But if you haven't, rhetoric is really just how we use words to achieve a purpose. If you've taken or are taking a public speaking class, you may have talked a lot about rhetoric. And it's really just how we communicate in a written or an oral form and why. So rhetoric is all about knowing who you're speaking to and what will be most persuasive to them. Now, persuasion isn't just getting someone to buy something, which, that is part of it, but really it's about getting your audience to buy into your ideas, to believe what you're saying and to really take them into consideration. So it's writing, but with a purpose. And it sort of involves this idea of community. So I believe that we don't write in a vacuum, that to be able to read and write, you have to understand that you're not alone in this process, that it's about not only me and your classmates, but the greater community at large. So hopefully by the end of our course, you'll get a lot of practice in just different types of writing, but with a purpose in mind. And that's really all that rhetoric is about. So we're going to watch a short video. What I'd like you to think about while you watch the video is a few things. Why do we need rhetoric? In today's world, in the year 2021, in a lot of crazy kind of happenings, why do we need it? What does it need to be successful? And when was the last time you used rhetoric or persuasion in general? And if you're thinking, I've never used rhetoric, I would argue that you have, you just don't know it yet. So rhetoric is really an everyday constant in our lives. And once you start to see it and to recognize it, you'll be surprised by how much it is in everything that we do. So let's go ahead with our video.
How do you get what you want using just your words? Aristotle set out to answer exactly that question over 2,000 years ago with a treatise on rhetoric. Rhetoric, according to Aristotle, is the art of seeing the available means of persuasion. And today we apply it to any form of communication. Aristotle focused on oration, though, and he described 3 types of persuasive speech. Forensic or judicial rhetoric establishes facts and judgments about the past, similar to detectives at a crime scene. Epidictic or demonstrative rhetoric makes a proclamation about the present situation, as in wedding speeches. But the way to accomplish change is through deliberative rhetoric, or symboleticon. Rather than the past or the present, deliberative rhetoric focuses on the future. It's the rhetoric of politicians debating a new law by imagining what effect it might have. Like when Ronald Reagan warned that the introduction of Medicare would lead to a socialist future spent telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free. But it's also the rhetoric of activists urging change, such as Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream that his children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. In both cases, the speakers present their audience with a possible future and try to enlist their help in avoiding or achieving it. But what makes for good deliberative rhetoric besides the future tense? According to Aristotle, there are three persuasive appeals: ethos, logos, and pathos. Ethos is how you convince an audience of your credibility. Winston Churchill began his 1941 address to the US Congress by declaring, "I have been in full harmony all my life with the tides which have flowed on both sides of the Atlantic against privilege and monopoly," thus highlighting his virtue as someone committed to democracy. Much earlier, in his defense of the poet Archias, Roman consul Cicero appealed to his own practical wisdom and expertise as a politician. Drawn from my study of the liberal sciences and from that careful training to which I admit that at no part of my life I have ever been disinclined. And finally, you can demonstrate disinterest, or that you're not motivated by personal gain. Logos is the use of logic and reason. This method can employ rhetorical devices such as analogies, examples, and citations of research or statistics. But it's not just facts and figures. It's also the structure and content of the speech itself. The point is to use factual knowledge to convince the audience, as in Sojourner Truth's argument for women's rights. "I have as much muscle as any man, and can do as much work as any man. I have plowed and reaped and husked and chopped and mowed, and can any man do more than that?" Unfortunately, speakers can also manipulate people with false information that the audience thinks is true, such as the debunked but still widely believed claim that vaccines cause autism. And finally, pathos appeals to emotion, and in our age of mass media, it's often the most effective mode. Pathos is neither inherently good nor bad, but it may be irrational and unpredictable. It can just as easily rally people for peace as incite them to war. Most advertising, from beauty products that promise to relieve our physical insecurities to cars that make us feel powerful, relies on pathos. Aristotle's rhetorical appeals still remain powerful tools today, but deciding which of them to use is a matter of knowing your audience and purpose, as well as the right place and time. And perhaps just as important is being able to notice when these same methods of persuasion are being used on you.
All right, so I know that video kind of discusses a lot of different ideas about rhetoric, and maybe some of them were new to you, but I want to return to these questions and just have you think about why we need rhetoric. So in the video, there were a lot of examples of famous speeches and politicians like Winston Churchill, Martin Luther King Jr., Sojourner Truth, famous people who use their words to persuade. And then also bringing in the idea of advertising and messages that influence us, that are around us on the daily. So I think those are the most sort of common understood, yeah, that's what rhetoric is. But I want you to also think about the fact that rhetoric is useful because once you understand how it works and you understand how you can use it, you can be more successful overall. It's understanding that a well-crafted email can get you what you want. It's understanding that the way you speak to your kids when you want them to do something can get you what you want. It's understanding that a message is dependent on who you're speaking to and why. Hopefully, you got also an idea of what it needs to be successful. The video talked about those three appeals, which you may have heard before. Ethos, meaning your credibility as a speaker, like why are you a good person to talk about this? Logos, which is probably the easiest to understand. That's examples, reasons, facts, and figures. The logic that we sort of believe that's, what good ideas need as support. but then also pathos, which is emotion. And most people find emotion to be the easiest appeal to use in their writing. But I want you guys to think about over the course of the semester using all three in different ways, depending on what you're writing about and why. And then ask yourself, when was the last time I used rhetoric or was persuaded by rhetoric? And chances are that you've encountered a idea of rhetoric in an unlikely place. So when you've got some time, please make sure that you read over our syllabus. I'm not going to walk through it because I know that you guys can read, but I really encourage you to check it out. It's probably the longest document, but lots of great information and important information for our course. So your first major assignment that you're going to kind of start working towards this week is called the Memoir. So this assignment sheet says Memoir magazine is accepting submissions of creative nonfiction with the theme of change. We're going to write an essay-length memoir, about 3 pages, that tells the story of how you changed as the result of an experience, positive or negative, big or small. Your memoir can discuss how you became interested in a hobby, started down a new path, or decided to stop pursuing a previous focus. The topics are flexible, as long as they start from a personal story. So the focus of this first essay is a story about you, but with the purpose of convincing me that it led to a change in who you are. So choose carefully. The idea is that you'll focus on an experience that is important to you, but it doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have to be a huge shift. I mean, think about all of the change that we've really experienced just in the last year. Make sure that you use your story to explain how and why it's changed you. So this is a narrative, which is a storytelling, but it's with a purpose. All right. So if you actually on the assignment sheet click on where it says Memoir magazine, it's a real magazine and has lots of great examples of memoirs. So if you're kind of like, oh, I don't actually really know what this means, click through that website and see if you get some ideas. We will be reading a couple examples from their website in the coming weeks. So to sort of build up to this first essay, the assignments for this week include your first reading reflection, which means that you'll just read the few articles I've selected for week 1. That's under the essay 1 link and then the week 1 folder. And then you'll complete an essay 1 topic and mind map. So by the end of this week, I'd like you to have settled on an experience you're going to focus on and then start thinking about, okay, what examples from that experience really show that I've changed as a result. If you have any questions, please don't be afraid to reach out. I know in an online class, sometimes you can feel like you're adrift in the sea without help, but I am here for you. Your classmates are here for you. And hopefully over the course of the next few weeks, we'll get to know a little bit more about each other. So thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you guys online.